Number A is PSC public hearing date and set for a rate case.
Just wanted to make the commission aware that the PSC has set our public hearing date for the 27th. They do these entirely remote now. We put it on the website, and it's just part of the process. People are able to submit written comments or come to this hearing and make a comment. The last one I was a part of was 2016, and we had one written submission and nobody showed up, and we were done in 30 seconds. So I'll keep you posted. As I think Cameron alluded to it last month's meeting, it's what the PSC is authorized is just under 25%, a lot less than he would have wanted and what our consultants thought. So we might be back doing this a little more often or a little sooner than we had hoped, but it's going to be more regular anyway. So.
Okay, any discussion or anything on that? We don't need a motion for that, do we?
Nope, just your info.
Okay, that's number A. Then we'll go to the meat of the subject. B, discuss and consider direction on the Ridge Lift Station. I'll turn it over to Strand.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Here with me tonight is Andy Constant, who worked on a lot of the report that you guys saw attached to the packet, and also Ty Wallen. You know, you've seen Kyla and I both at some of these meetings, and Ty is going to be helping me now that Kyla has you know gone to a different firm and chose a different path. So Ty has been involved in the village for a couple of years now. He knows quite a bit about a handful of things. So just wanted to introduce him tonight. This is a pretty big project. That's why you know they're all three of us are here tonight to talk about it a little bit. I'm sure we're not going to want to go page for page in this thing, so instead, what I'd like to do is just give a general overview, kind of the main topic points for everybody here. And Lisa, can I share my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second. Let's make sure it goes up there. So I want to start with a little bit of a project overview overall. I was hoping this was going to let me. It's not letting me use touchscreen. It's not refreshing fast. Here we go. So if you all recall, there's this red line on this overview map that was in the report. It's along Progress Drive. That red line was a force main that was installed when they redid Progress Drive a handful of years ago. An additional force main when they ran one out to the South Main lift station, which is down in this area. If you can see my cursor there. They ran a force main out to that, and at the same time you brought another one to this intersection up here by Hydrite. So right where Progress Drive and Hydrite connect, there was a second force main 10-inch. The reason for that was there was always a plan to somehow try to serve that east side of the village. You can see that kind of larger map in those highlighted areas. The blue area that you're seeing there to the east along Ridge Road, that area, you know, for a handful of years has been for sale. Years ago, there was some interest in doing some development that kind of went quiet, but in the past 2 years, there's been quite a bit of interest out in that kind of blue shaded property by a couple of developers, and now one more recently that is quite interested in doing something out there. The issue always comes though is if you were to develop out in that blue area, well, how are you going to get sewer to come back into the village? Most sewers run by gravity, right? But we're running out of depth there, so you can't continue sewer on and be able to feed those homes. So you need some sort of a lift station. In that purple area, that's called the Trillium lift station area, the Forston area. That actually already has a lift station on it, a small lift station that pumps back into your system up on Taylor Drive and Ridge Road there. And then it flows by gravity back to South Main and then gets pumped from there back to the lift station, the main lift station that pumps everything to MMSD over on Vilas. So what we're proposing, or what we looked at and researched, was how can we serve that blue area, the red area, the farther even future expansion to the north and east of the village, and potentially at the same time, what we'll talk about is even taking the purple area off into the same area and pumping all that directly over to Vilas so that it can be pumped to MMSD in the future. So we're gonna walk through the report a little bit to talk about the pieces of how to make that happen and maybe kind of next steps a little bit. Andy, do you wanna talk, first about the lift station a little bit?
Yeah, and to give the, like Josh said, won't go page by page, just a brief project overview. We investigated, I'd say, 2 items. One was the actual lift station site itself and a potential storage building. And then we looked at some alternatives for routing that force main from the lift station location to that Progress Drive connection. We reviewed the abandonment of Trillium Lift Station and interceptor to the north to try to capture that initial blue area that can be tied onto. So, for the lift station, we looked at generally 2 types of lift station. One is a wet well, dry well type lift station, and one is a submersible type lift station. The wet well, dry well type station generally is around 35 to 40% more expensive than the submersible station counterpart, and that's due to the fact that you can see on the left screen there, or the left side, the left figure, those pumps are actually inside of a dry well or dry room that are more easily accessible, but with that comes more excavation costs, more structure costs. You've got to heat, ventilate, and supply power to that lower level. So this type of station is more similar to the Vilas road lift station that you've got. The other alternative is a submersible station where the pumps are actually submerged down inside of the sewage. Benefit here, it's usually more cost effective than the wet well, dry well station, but in order to maintain the pumps, those have actually got to be pulled with a crane instead of down in kind of the dry well area of the first option. This would be most similar to your South Main your South Main lift station that you've got today.
And all the other small lift stations
And all the
that you
other
have
small lift
too,
stations,
right? The wet well, dry well, the one on the left side there is really only at Vilas, and like, like Andy was saying, it's just quite a bit bigger structure. You can see like over the building, all of this, the lower part would all be a large vault, where on the other one, you just have a large manhole that everything comes into and you pump it directly from there. And we've talked to John about this quite a bit, and John, I know you were gonna kind of look into this a little bit on your own. One thing to consider as a community is do you hire somebody to come in and pull your pumps, or do you do them on your own? Like, do you do maintenance on your own, or do you have somebody come in and do it? And if you have somebody that comes in and does it, is a submersible, save a little extra money there. What you might want to do in this case, because it's not a super, super large lift station, but it's pretty good size. And I know you were going to look into that a little, John, and maybe get some feedback. And it's not something you have to decide tonight, but it's just something to think about as you move forward. Any questions on the lift station piece of it, or the 2 different options? Charlie?
It said you're gonna have 2 pumps and a possibility of a third?
That's good.
And either station can do that?
Yes.
Or is it just the dry?
Nope, both stations can do it. So picture the station we're sizing for that blue area and that red area. We're sizing it for the entire project. The wet well, where all the water comes in, is gonna be there. We're gonna put 2 pumps in now because we really don't need 3 pumps. And actually the 2 pumps we're gonna put in now aren't even as bigger ones that you could put in the future. So they're a little bit smaller in size. They're gonna run until it reaches capacity, which could be, quite a few years down the road. As you go into that red area and you expand more and more, you could add a 3rd pump, or you could upsize all 3 of the pumps at the same time to even get more capacity. So we're building it so you can have that flexibility to ultimately serve the entire area without having to do anything else but switch out pumps or add a pump, if that makes sense.
And are all these pumps gonna have the grinders or the shredders, whatever they're, impellers? What's the correct term?
Well, there's a few different ways. I'll let Andy talk about them, but you have a grinder in South Main, right?
Yeah, currently we have a separate grinder that's off of the actual main wet well at South Main. And in this day and age, when we try to promote people to not flush wipes and things down, it happens. And these grinder type apparatuses are much better for us on the maintenance side, to be able to kind of chew that stuff up and kind of make it a little more pumpable, I guess is the best word to use.
Well, it might help the pumps too. So are they added on here already, or are they going to be a separate, later on, add-on?
So It could be added on, we don't have it shown in here right now, but it could be similar to what you have at South Main Street, and this wet well actually might be large enough where you could put that right on the influent sewer like you do at South Main, and we could put another access hatch above it, and then you'd be able to insert that grinder
Right, even
into the
though
influent
it's
station,
right in
and
that-
that grinds up the wastewater before it gets pumped by the
Okay.
pumps.
Well, not to make work, but I think I'd really like to make sure that's done.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Whether we can fit it into this wet well or have a manhole right outside of this wet well like you have at West Main. We might be able to avoid that and just put it all right in this one with another hatch, cause it's gonna be big enough, so. That's something definitely as you go into design, Charlie, yep,
Okay.
you can implement. And the costs and the contingencies that we have into this budget would
Mhm.
allow for something like that
Okay,
too.
excellent.
So
Thank you.
I think we're okay there.
Is there any difference in expected life expectancy or warranties with one or the other?
As far as the pumps or just equipment in general?
Both.
For the pumps, generally, we would specify a non-prorated 5-year warranty for those pumps when they're installed, you know, either in the wet well submerged or the dry well. And in fact, the pumps that will be installed inside of the wet well can also be installed in a dry type environment. So, they're normally enclosed. I don't think that would limit or reduce your life expectancy of the equipment.
Okay, thanks.
Having in a wet versus dry, yeah.
They both last about the same
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah.
of the situation. Any other big questions on that piece of it? Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
building there?
And then to go along with the lift station site, there was some, want expressed for a vehicle storage garage. And what we got shown here is an example, for a vehicle storage garage that we, designed for the city of Whitewater. Obviously, this could be condensed down, and we were thinking more of a 2-bay, sized storage garage, but this is just to kind of give a flavor of what, could be installed at the site. And we could also incorporate that into the control building for the lift station, so it's all under one roof, have multiple access points, but make it look like one cohesive site. So we can,
And will that fit all of the vehicles that John has?
how
I
many
mean,
feet?
not the number, but I mean, the height to get in and out.
Yeah, we would make sure he gets the door he wants on
Right.
there too. And it might be more equipment than it is actual vehicles, right, that you'd even be storing, but it'd give them extra space for the utility, the needed space that you need for that. So there is in that budget, there's a line item for that, for that cost of that building also.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of part one of the 2 items in the project overview. The second one is the force main, and gravity sewer routes. And Josh had kind of alluded to, the force main tie on to the Progress Drive, extension that was done previously, but we've had some preliminary discussions with Hydrite, during this preliminary engineering phase, and they seemed agreeable to, allowing an easement for this new force main, and that's something that we'll need to finalize with them, but this route was determined by, through conversations with Hydrite staff. So we think it's definitely possible to get from point A to point B, with the force main from the lift station to the tie-on point.
So, yeah, I mean, the route overall, if we put the lift station out here on the end of, what is that road that wraps around there? I mean, Heather Drive has a little stub on it at the end here. You put the lift station out here, you'd feed it back along past Trillium, and then the Hydrite area, right, is this kind of Hydrite campus and their facility here. We talked to them about going north around their facility. Right now, there's lines that go directly through their facility like this. There's some water that goes directly through there. We talked to them about that. And we also talked about going south along potentially the path. And what was determined with them, at least at this point, would be coming and just going around just to the north, if you can see my cursor there, where they have a bunch of their trailers and stuff, and then back down and around. So as part of this, we want to shore up some easements. We'd also want to clean up the easements that are there with water and some other sanitary. It seems like right now, there's a bunch of documents out there, and I think all parties just wanted to clean all that up as part of this project.
So the north one is probably the best
This-
option, right?
This one right here,
That one.
Charlie is gonna be the best option. All the way to the north would have been option two, but we would have had a lot of clearing and grubbing of trees, and it's up against the residential there too. And we just thought, it might not be the best thing at the end of the day that we're gonna clear a wooded area out to the north.
That's prone to a lot of water in that area.
As it gets back down and over into here too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll see another line item in that report for the abandonment of the Trillium lift station. And what this would do is effectively, it eliminate that lift station, bring overflow to the new Ridge lift station. That serves a benefit. It gives the Ridge lift station some base flow in the early stages before the development really starts to go off and limit some of that detention time in the wet well. So it'll give it a good base flow to operate and limit those detention times. And also, Josh, I know we had talked, there's a SCADA upgrade or a lift station
Yeah.
upgrade planned at the Trillium. So if we do plan to bring this over, that's maybe some cost saved that we could maybe not proceed with that, planning to bring it over to this
Right.
Ridge lift station.
If you were, serious about moving ahead with Ridge, the development was happening out there. I've talked with John about this a little bit. I mean, your SCADA improvements alone at this Trillium site, because you were gonna add a generator, you had a lot of, electronics to replace, new antenna, concrete pad. I mean, this is one of the rougher stations out there. I mean, it's old, it's in really bad shape. You're gonna spend roughly around $300,000 on that station that, we probably would say time out, let's wait a couple of years as we get the rest of this all developed. It's fine to probably run for the next couple of years and then abandon it. And you're probably thinking, well, how would you abandon it, right? Like, everything flows to this point right here. So how do we get everything from this point to go over to this point, right? Well, this yellow line in here means that, there's a cost to lay that sewer in a different direction, right? So coming in here and starting at this and then laying it so that it can flow by gravity all the way back to this station. So it's not just we pull that station out, we actually have to lay some new sanitary line in to get the station to get where everything collected to flow that direction. But in the long run, it's one less station to maintain, it's one less station to power, you don't have to switch out pumps as often, and it gives, like Andy said, base flow to the new station right away, which is kind of nice because you can get that thing operating and running before you need it for a bunch of the development to the north.
Right, and also to note is that the new force main is gonna be in that same
Yes.
area, so we gotta rip that road up
We got to dig that
to,
road
to,
across.
to lay that new force main, so by doing so, sure, there's some cost, but we're gonna have that trench open. We'll obviously have to have a deeper trench for this gravity, but that force main's gonna kinda lay in by this new setup.
Yeah, you got to dig in the street anyways to get the force main in. Yeah, it's a,
Is there gonna be two pipes, one going gravity fed and then the other one going the other way for the new station?
yeah, yep, you got it. So yes, from the yellow line down, we're gonna be feeding new pipe, with my cursor down to that station, but at the same time, there'll be a pipe coming back out along the same alignment as it comes back up and then past that old station as it goes into hydrate and connects over along Main Street.
That's all gonna be done in one dig?
They'll have to dig two trenches, but you're already tearing up some of the pavement in the road.
But I mean, will it be done at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
All of it will be done with the same project. Yes. Yep. Yep. Some of it's gonna, the tricky part with it, right, is we're gonna have to install the force main, get it up, get it over there, get it installed, and then come back and take the flow to the station. So there's a staging to it, but it's all gonna be done under the same kind of project, yep. By the same contractor. And then the road would be repaved after that at the end.
I think one more benefit to abandoning the Trillium is it does pull off some flow to your South Main lift station also.
Oh,
So
that's a good point.
you're gaining some capacity back at South Main.
Sorry, guys. Right, yeah, this station already was pumped from here, so you're spending money to pump it over to South Main, and then you're spending money to pump it again. You're taking capacity out of South Main to pump it again over to Vilas. In this case, we're just gonna pump it straight to Vilas if we can get it over to Ridge. And it gives you that much more capacity at South Main if you have development in other places or to the south to that station, so that's a good point, Andy.
And there was something in there too about the South Main, after a certain point, it's gonna be overstressed, volume-wise?
Correct, yeah, in the long-term plan we looked at.
Yep.
eventually it will, we've got to monitor those flows, but at some point in the ultimate condition, we've projected it to be overpowered or out of capacity.
Hopefully a ways down the
Yeah,
road.
Hopefully
it
it
was a
was.
ways down.
It was a ways down the road.
All right.
And that's looking at its current pumps and configuration to that station.
Mhm.
There may be things you can do to it to get more capacity out of it at that point too. It's not like you're just like, well, now we gotta redo the whole thing, you'll probably have to try to modify it. Yep.
I think the last item here that you'll see is a line item in those costs in the report is that interceptor to the north.
Oh,
Yeah, that interceptor to the north in that blue area, and what that serves is an 18-inch interceptor sized for the ultimate area, that blue and red portion of the project. But it's to allow, developers to hook on and provide flow to the new lift station and for them to, I guess, be served, right?
Right. You're gonna kind of have that with an interceptor sewer. As you continue to go to the north, the developer is gonna say, hey, I only need an 8-inch to serve my property, by code. I can't afford to put an 18-inch in twice as deep. So usually there's some cost share that kind of goes on, and you'll have that as you piggyback that all the way to the north to serve properties in the future. This first stub that's in the cost gets you up and past Ridge Road, so you can serve development. The developer's been talking about starting on the north side and then the south side, and we've kind of gotten mixed messages, so it at least gets you to a part where he can take it from there. So all of those costs are as part of that overall preliminary cost that you saw in the report.
And so the main difference between the alternative A here and the alternative B was the type of lift station that we discussed earlier on. Every other item is, the same between alternatives, so that's your main difference.
Yeah, it's just the first really line there, right, Andy?
Yep.
And then you can see in there, you have the 10-inch force main. That's the stuff that takes it back from across hydrate to tie back into the main. The 18-inch interceptor sewer is the stuff that's going north to serve that new blue parcel, Trillium, storage garage, and then we have some contingencies and a bunch of other add-ons. Again, the budgets these are budgetary budgets, today's dollars, but some pretty good contingencies. We know that the developers talked out there or have in the past that, hey, we want to go. And if they want to go, it's kind of a year and a half, kind of 2-year time frame. By the time they kind of make some commitments to the time they start moving a bunch of stuff, build their infrastructure, and then start building homes that will have to be online. So these costs, are good within the next couple of years here to probably fit within the budget. But if this waits, obviously 5-10 years out, obviously this would have to be, revisited. Any questions on costs?
No, but I have one more thing on
Yep.
the route. I know Hydrite is doing their best to contamination-wise to
Yep.
keep it that way. And I think the north route is gonna be the least, because all the contaminants in the Superfund site are all drifting to the south.
They're all going south.
So if you go either of those, you're gonna run into a lot of contaminants, I'm sure. I mean, they make their best effort, but I think the north route is another vegetation in that, and I think there's less there,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
or possibly less there, let's say.
Yeah. And we'll have to, as you do the project, take some of those considerations into with, if they're dewatering, they're gonna probably have to, make sure that gets into their treatment dewater system. They probably can't haul stuff off-site, they have to put soil back to what they dug up
And
there.
is that contingency in proposal now?
Yeah, there's some thought to that as we went through there, knowing that we might need to have a special pipe type or special gaskets or, vice versa, of what we find when we kind of go in and do some soil borings.
But there's some budget here already, right?
Yeah, yep. I think we're still okay on that, Charlie.
Okay, again, thank you.
One question, what if anything can we recoup for developers or impact fees?
That is a good question. And the idea, JJ, you can take it from here, but the idea of what we always thought was if you look at that blue and red properties, this is all kind of an impact for them. It's not an impact for somebody that lives out on West Lawn, or Shady Grove, right? Like, this is there to serve that entire, let's call it the east sewer shed, right? So the impact, we've talked to the developer out there, and, you know, round numbers, if we're looking at 6 to 7 million here, they may have $1 million impact coming right into it. So you guys might borrow the money, go out and do this project, but instantly, they may have a $1 million payment back, you know, as part of that, as they start to build their homes and impact fees back into it. So the idea would be that you would recoup everything, and
Yep.
and JJ, you've looked more into this, but
Well, and you covered it pretty well, Josh. Can you bring up the whole
the host.
sewer shed, the red area too?
Yeah.
Because John, we talked with Cameron, and it would come, the exact specifics of the financing would come back here again for approval, but what he's 100% not 100, nothing in the world is 100%, but, first development comes, they ink the developer's agreement with their portion. He's thinking you can do long-term, 40-year revenue bonds, and then essentially that million they have to pay will go to pay that debt for an awful long time as things are being built, homes are being built, those impact fees are paid, there's ratepayers coming on board. So it's protecting the existing ratepayers now. And so literally, nothing else, if nothing else develops, it would still be no impact to current ratepayers for 40 years. He's thrown out the idea of special assessments for these parcels versus, or not special assessments, but assessing their share basically on these. So then when they come to develop the next 40, say, all right, here you go, right up front, you owe X for your piece of this regional lift station that was put in. But he's basically confident because you want to borrow for these long periods of time for something like this that essentially should last hundreds of years. You know, you upgrade the pumps and you maintain it, but the hole there in that building will be there for a long time. So you don't want to impact even people just in the next 20 years. You want this to be paid for by the people that'll serve forever. So he had no real concerns. Really, he said to me, most likely it's going to be a benefit to all the existing ratepayers because once they start building, and we already have those protections built in, bring new customers on, that eases everything else we got to do in the sewer utility. So, like I said, the specifics would have to come back here with the exact borrowing, and then you can really dig into it with Cameron if you want. But
And I think we're talking about doing impact fees, reassessing them too. I think
Yep.
Cameron mentioned that.
Yeah.
once we are complete, when we talked about it, it's just been a year and a half, but after the rate case is done, we're gonna use Trilogy to update the impact fees, water and sewer side anyway, but then investigate this, whether they recommend just specific impact fees for this or some other way to capture this, but that'll all be ironed out through all that red part.
So, I'm trying to go back down here. Next steps, a little bit. I know this was discussed and kind of consider on here. I mean, the next steps in our mind would be, you know, on a budgetary sense, you know, as you move forward, let's say the developer, I know Aaron's gonna continue to probably start to talk to the village about this. These kind of have to be approved hand in hand or side by side to some degree. We have to be ready to go when they're ready to go. Otherwise, what we're hearing from developers is timing is everything to them, right? And in a year and a half, they want to have homes that are sewered. Well, at the same time, we have to be able to build this thing, you know, design, construct, and build it, which is it's a big project. And some of the equipment and lead time for stuff takes some time. So budget, like what is everybody comfortable with? We'd like to get out of this group, you know, type of station. Do we abandon Trilogy before we sink money into it? And the storage building, because all those are costs on here, right? I mean, abandoning Trillium's 600,000, right? The storage garage is 5. What was the other thing I mentioned there? The type of station is another probably 5, right? So you're looking at $1.5 million of some considerations of what direction you want to go. If it all goes back to the new development, maybe it's not that big of a deal. You know, maybe you do what you really want and you do the full thing. And we can decide on wet well versus submersible at a later date. You know, that's not that big a deal, but I mean, those are like the next steps is to kind of figure out.
My biggest thing is I'm not in favor of putting pipe in until we get something in writing that, yes, he's gonna put houses out there.
Yep.
And if that's the case, then he's got the $1 million or whatever up front, then we should consider doing it. And then as far as which one, I would defer that to John and JJ with their experience in, first of all, maintaining them, and then the fact that they've got history with doing both of them. If that's okay. I like to go to the experts.
I like that approach. The only other couple of next steps that I think may take some time and we may want to think about starting at some point, whether it's now or in the near future, is one with Hydrite. I mean, if we kind of know where we want to go, do we start to formalize some easements with them, and will that take time? I don't know, because they want to clean up the other ones. So cleaning up those easements, talking to the land, that's the other thing, is the developers keep talking to the person that owns this blue land out here, but we kind of know where we want the station, and we know where we're gonna want an easement to the north. I feel like we've always been kind of the party that's just kind of, they don't really know what we want or what we're doing. The developer's like, well, we'll go talk to the farmer, but the farmer really doesn't know what we want. And at some point, do we want to approach that landowner that owns all of the blue and say, we know you're dealing with a bunch of people, but here's what we need? And just work with them to like secure some of that now before, or at least talk about what we need with them so that they know when they're talking to the developers. I don't know if we've ever had that meeting with them, have we, Aaron?
Not with the property owner. The developer has had that, indicated this is what they want to know is where it's going to be and where the easements are.
So what would be just right now figuring out easements? Would that be a logical first step before we actually do anything else?
I think so.
Just cleaning them up, like you
Yeah.
said, it could be a positive.
Yeah.
And then I think Hydrite, again, I can't imagine they'd want us to go through their actual facility.
Right.
And I don't think, because of the way the Superfund site flows to the south, that that's very good either, because you're gonna find contaminants. I mean,
Yeah.
they have monitor wells all
Yeah.
over out there.
Yeah.
So I think figuring out the easements right away would be, I think, first step, if everybody agrees.
Do we know, like that blue south of Ridge, do we know how, if it's ever been platted, or if there's thoughts on where that road's gonna go? I mean, we have this like hypothetical straight line of
We
a
don't.
interceptor,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if, if there's been like, anything's came to the village that said, this is what we think that might look like.
Not really. They kind of want to know where we want to put our stuff first, I think.
Sure,
It's chicken and the egg thing.
Sure.
But I guess what you're saying,
Because that really should be under a road, a future road, right, someday?
you would like, so John's bringing up a good point, like, do you want it right along this property line where it would be in the grass or green area that you'd have to get access to? Or does, the road come in here at a weird angle or something and tie back up into here or something, right? So that's where the interceptor would follow, right? And we don't really know that until we see some platting potentially that happens.
But this developer hasn't came with anything.
He's done more stuff to the north of this.
Yeah,
Oops. And he's done more stuff to the north than he has to the south piece. He's shown us what he wants to do on the north side. That's the other thing with the north side is we start, as he develops in this blue area to the north, there's a little bit of a ridge on the north piece of that, and this is details that we can talk about anytime. There's a ridge up here that essentially puts a 30-foot deep sewer at 40 feet deep up in this one spot. We may want to go around that out of economics, of putting that pipe in, which puts us onto the school property. An easement that would be needed into that school conservancy. So there's some discussions that at some point those need to be had too. It might just be good to talk to some of the landowners around there, right? Like the farmer, to see what their ultimate plans are. And if we can, at a minimum, we are gonna need some piece down here for the lift station. We know the best place to put it is on one of these corners and good access off this road. Are they gonna actually bring a road all the way down here and serve this? Maybe not with all the environmental corridor that's down there. But you'd probably want your station to be at the end of that
Right.
stub.
Right.
So we would wanna lock up some piece of property or a lot on either side of this road down here, to put the station at some point.
So, any suggestions, you guys? I'd like to make a suggestion that we ask them to move forward with the easements.
Or at least have some discussions with these, let's
Right.
come back to this
Right,
group. with
yeah,
it, yeah.
whatever your
Yeah.
opinion is. Because I think that'd be the first thing, regardless of whether you build it or not, you can clean up the easements. And get an idea for the future of what we're because it's like you said, it's a chicken and an egg. You know, I don't wanna bury pipe and then go like, oh, we decided not to do it, you know? That's happened.
And you don't wanna start building roads until we commit to building lift stations.
Right.
Yeah, everybody has to commit at the same time, really.
But again, if the lift station is where you're proposing it now, that's the end of an existing road, correct?
It is, yep. It stubs right out to the spot.
So you know, you can say that's where the lift station's gonna be if we can get that smaller piece of property. I'm looking for guidance from the experts here, how we should approach this. You know, what should be first, the easements? Talk to the landowners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, having some of those conversations, I think, is first. I agree, Charlie, we're not gonna design and put in the ground anything until full commitment. I think that'd be foolish. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'd have, and any developer's agreement with them that, you know, commits their portion of this is also gonna have protections if they don't sell one home, that we're still getting that million towards this. I mean, that's all gonna be in that very first agreement. So we're not gonna, theoretically, we could put pipe in the ground that won't serve anything, but they're gonna pay for it, or at least their portion of it. So it could still be there to feed future development, whether they sold any lots or not. So it's not gonna be, there's not that, the risk will be all in this first developer, largely.
So is that okay with you guys? We suggest that they start with the easements and then possibly the property of the future lift station. And try to get that nailed down.
You can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we need a motion for that?
I think what my thought
Just
was
give them
is,
direction? What do
if
we
these
do?
guys call Aaron tomorrow and they really are serious and wanna go,
Yep.
can we, I don't know what this motion would look like, but can we confidently say, you know, one day get the easement, next day kick off design, if that's the case and they're working with the developer agreement, with the attorneys to get a developer's agreement, that's a lot of ifs. But if that were the case, I was looking for an overall, from the utility commission, this plan sounds good, so that we can sit with them and say, if
we
you
worded
do
something
this.
like, we're making a motion to approve Strand to go ahead with easement and possible property acquisition, and then. step
And
two-
direction to,
and then
to
step
confidently
two,
say to them,
Yeah, step one is this, and
yep,
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for, JJ, I think what you're looking for is almost an approval of the preliminary design kind of study to say, yes, this is the direction we want to go. If you get somebody that comes in here, JJ, and they say, we want to build,
Yep.
would you commit to it? You
Yep.
can
I
confidently
can
say,
look at them and say yes.
our
The
utility commission says, we're ready to go when you're ready
Yep.
to go,
Yep.
basically.
so how are we gonna word?
I don't know. I don't know how you're gonna word that. Right? I mean, it's kind of what you're saying.
That's why we brought in
Because they
Lisa.
kind of, it has been hard because they've hesitated a little bit, like what,
And I don't blame them when they
Yeah.
see 7 million,
yeah,
and that's, I'm not a developer, but those numbers don't jive. So
Yeah.
they gotta know that
yeah.
7
So
million we're
make-
committed to, but their
Make a
portion.
motion to move ahead with proposal for preliminary approval of your, whatever your, what do you wanna call your thing? I'm sorry, I'm not very good at proposals.
No, and I don't really know what we're looking for, because I don't think this body doesn't necessarily have to approve each step. You know, if
Right.
Josh calls up off and they're like, yep, no problem, here's the easement, draw it up, we'll give it to you.
Okay.
That's done by,
How about we make a motion to approve the preliminary engineering report for the Ridge Lift Station? And then you can just break it down into your segments. Is that,
Do we need it on condition of, like, written commitment
I would, yeah,
from the developer?
I think so.
Yeah.
That adding that Chris,
Just,
makes
we
sense.
all know that, and we understand that, but if I'm a resident who's watching, yeah, and I read the minutes, they're just gonna commit to 7 million? Yeah, some kind of
Figured
a,
this out a long time ago, so.
What do we got, Lisa?
What do we got, Lisa? What did you type?
Preliminary engineering report for the Ridge Lift Station on condition of written commitment from developer.
So moved.
that's why I brought
Does
Lisa.
that make sense, or sign developers agreement? Or is that too deep into there?
I think that's too deep into it, because it might be a pre-developer agreement to
Yeah.
iron this out, then another developer agreement after when it's done.
Again, I think as you make those, as we move forward too, there's gonna be some stopgaps a little bit, right? Like, it doesn't mean if you make that commitment and you move forward, all of a sudden we're putting pipe in tomorrow, right? We're gonna start design, we're gonna start moving forward. If something falls through on their end immediately, everybody's just gonna stop, right? You know, at that point, right? If we're working through that, it would just, okay, they backed out, we're stopping, like,
Well, we kind of we talked to that a year and a half ago, when basically Cameron said we got too much impact fees, and we're like, Josh,
Yeah.
design the lift station for us, because that's not gonna be
Right.
wasted effort no
That's
matter
there
what.
forever,
But,
for 20 years.
Yeah.
right, and we haven't gone that far. We haven't said, let's go design it. We kind of stepped back and said, do we really want to put too much into this until we get a commitment? We don't want to spend money and then let it sit on the shelf for 10, 15 years either, and then redesign something later. I mean, you're getting to a point though where you could probably move ahead and start some design, but again, I want you guys to feel comfortable before you actually, you know, make that commitment.
So if we do this motion, without you going into actually designing the station, can you just do that first section like we talked about, the easements?
Yeah, we can keep,
Looking at
yeah.
maybe the properties?
Yeah, I think we start looking at the properties and making sure we can get easements where we really want to get them, and then if this gets hot on the development side, maybe next month we come back and say, let's just start design and move, you know, we
Yeah,
might
no,
really,
We're
we-
a monthly
right,
thing right
yeah.
now, so.
and Cameron's last thing before he left here was he reminded me of the impact fee balances. So basically, Strand's work on this and easements and everything could all be applied to this project, whether it happens in a year or 20 years, and be paid for with those impact fees, so it's a win-win, no
All
matter
right, so
what.
Lisa, would you read it one more time and then approve it?
Okay, to approve the preliminary engineering report for the Ridge Lift Station with condition of written commitment from developer.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
And so you're making that motion?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. So any more discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of that proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No abstaining. Okay, thank you all for your time and effort, especially you. Okay, so that finishes up the old business engineers report, number 7. Anything to add?
Not much to add. I mean, obviously Ridge Lift Station's a big thing. The other thing we're working on is the SCADA. So the SCADA upgrades at the wells and the lift stations and everything that John and his department has been working on. LW Allen's gonna do a portion of that. Remember, we're gonna bid out all the electrical side to that. The bid should be advertised in early March. We got the final stuff that John and we're gonna work together and review. So early March, bid opening at the end of March. By the time April rolls around, we'll have costs and everything else for that project and can move forward with it.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's it.
All right, again, much appreciated. Director's report, John?
I guess, I know last month we talked about that we had a mixer go down in our far north tower. We did some investigating and the mixer's, you know, it's 10 years old and it's past its useful life and we can't get it spinning anymore. So we'll have to replace that. That's like a $30,000 mixer. So let's see, we did complete all of our cleaning and televising of our concrete and our clay sewer in the village that I know of. We're still pretty fresh into this, but the spots that I know of. And what we kind of discovered was most of the clay is in good shape. There's some cracks and some like physical like holes in the clay that's open to the earth, which we'll obviously have to kind of button up with some liner and some other things. Our concrete sewer, excuse me, on Taylor and on West Reynolds and then on Clark, those are there's so much aggregate showing in the flow lines that we're probably gonna have to full line those stretches of pipe. But But again, not a huge undertaking, but it's something we're gonna have to do because it's so rough that it's kind of holding back a lot of the sewer that's gravity flowing through it, so we're gonna have to kind of create a new inside to those pipes to kind of make them last another 100 years. Otherwise, we did hire an internal candidate for our utility superintendent position, so he was kind of a lead water operator at another municipality and kind of came aboard, so he will be a great kind of asset to our supervisor team that we currently have. And I know we haven't really talked a whole lot since probably one of my first meetings here, but I'm a big GIS lover, right? We did approve that R2 collector, and we've been, just to kind of give you guys an update, we've collected pretty much every asset in the village, minus some curb stops, but every major asset has been recollected and realigned in our GIS, and we're now in the process of kind of updating some of the other data, the attributes to those data, like when it was installed and what material type it is, and all that kind of comes back to all these reports that we have to do for the DNR or the EPA, or so one of these new reports that we have to start kind of working more towards is our lead and copper inventory. The EPA is kind of requiring it. We're supposed to have our inventory done by October, and we're kind of getting there, but we're supposed to account for all of our public and private services, sizes and material types, and a lot of that was there. We're just trying to confirm some of that data, like, is it really copper? What size it is? Is it plastic on the private side? And things we're kind of working on. So just wanted to make sure everybody, knew that, we're making good use of some of these tools that we have. And I would love to show anybody here kind of our GIS, and because I am really proud of it, and it's a great tool that we use every day. But that's all I got. Do you have any other questions for me at all? Yeah.
Repair work at Clark Street, that doesn't require any ripping up the road or anything?
No, thankfully that's all done manhole to manhole. So it's kind of an epoxy slip liner that kind of goes in. It's actually kind of a neat process, but yeah, it'll seal up because nowadays PVC pipes are so much longer, so you have so many fewer seams. It's tighter. Where concrete and clay are 5-foot joints. Sometimes they're 10-foot joints. So there's so many more joints, and it kind of helps seal all those joints from eye and eye. And I got a bunch of pictures. I'm sure, I don't know if anybody's interested, but some little snippets of what they found, or when they televised it, you can see like broken pipes, and it's pretty interesting to see, and gives you a good kind of a view of an area that normally you don't get a chance to see or even want to see, but.
Water in, water out, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you, John. Number 9 is set the next meeting date, right now, March 13th. We can check, folks. Everybody good? Okay, so we'll set it for March 13th at 5 p.m. and probably here again. Okay? And number 10, any future agenda items that people have that they'd like to see put on? Okay? So now, number 11 is, we're gonna go into closed session. So, the closed session is regarding establishment of a negotiation